Welcome to another episode of Chelsea's Live Line. And of course, I'm your host today. As you know, it is Black History Month. So what we have to do is put our Black mental health first. I want to thank y'all so much for taking the time out to join. Yes, today's going to be a special episode, and I already see some comments. Shout out to my auntie, Ebony. She says, good evening, everyone. I hope you all got to enjoy the sunshine. So yes, we got a little bit of sunshine out here in Michigan, and my guest is from Texas. So I know she probably got some sunshine as well, and you'll be seeing her in just a bit. All right, so let's get into it. Black History Month's 2022 theme is Black Health and Wellness. With that being the case, I have to let you know that Black mental health matters. It does. It doesn't matter just today. It matters every single day and not just this month as well. So what I want to do first is start off with the word of the day, which is coming from 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. Yes, that's 1 Peter 5, 7. But also what I want to add on to that is another verse, which is faith without works is dead. We've heard that. So you have the faith, but you have to put in that work behind the scenes in order to manifest the life that you so ever desire. All right. And a shout out to my girl Adriana as well for tuning in. I appreciate that. And I see y'all joining as well. So I love that. One other announcement I want to make is that February 13th is National Black Love Day. So love on yourself because it's all about self-care. You can't love anybody else if you don't love yourself. So February 13th, make sure you celebrate that holiday. And what I want to do is start off with a clip, which is the reason why we have to focus on our mental wellness.
I had to work on my wellness so I can be whole. It took approximately 10 years, because that's the average length of time that they say somebody who lives with mental wellness issues, that's the time that it takes for them to come to grips with it and to seek treatment. For Black people, I think it's much longer. And so within those 10 years, I've been on medication, which quelled the suicidal ideations. They're no more. I go to therapy every week. Hi, Dr. Val. It's been so critical for me in my wellness because I decided to go from living to thriving. To my Black brothers and sisters, you too deserve to go from living to thriving. We no longer have to wear the mask. We're survivors. There's help now. We can get help and walk out there with our heads held high and get the treatment that we need so we can go from living to thriving.
That's all I want to do is go from living to thriving. And I have somebody here today who's going to help us do just that. That's why I'm telling you, you have to seek help. And it starts with us recognizing that, and then we can be everlasting in the wellness that we deserve. So I want to introduce you to my guest for today. I found her just through a Google search. And also I want to give a shout out to my cousin Ashley because she told me about Dr. Ebony as well. I've seen her post a few of her different videos that she has on her page. So Dr. Ebony, she is from Texas. She is a licensed psychologist and a food relationship strategist, okay? And with those two terms, she's letting you know that food is not bait. We're going to learn about that today because in our Black community, you know, we love to create this relationship with food, but it's an unhealthy one. So I'm going to introduce you to someone who's going to help you get your mind right and going to help you get your health right because both of those are tied together. So let me welcome my guest, Dr. Ebony, to the show. Hello,
Hi.
Dr. Ebony.
Hi, Chelsea. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. I was telling you during the sound check, or right before I saw you, I see you with the black on. So, you know, we're repping the right color today.
Yes.
Yes,
Always.
yes. That's right. So I want to plug your social media. Follow her at Dr. Ebony online. You're going to be learning a lot today. So we're going to get started with this convo now. First question for you is, what is the difference between a therapist and a psychologist?
So these two terms are often used interchangeably, right? Therapy and therapist refers to the work that we do. It refers to the service. And psychologist refers to the type of training that we receive. So you can see therapists range anywhere from having a PhD or a PsyD, LCSW, so licensed clinical social worker, licensed marriage and family therapist, licensed professional counselor. So all of us are therapists if we choose to provide therapy. I'm a psychologist, which means that I went to school and studied the philosophy, the theories of psychology. And I can actually, I think some of us can do assessments, but I can also do assessments and all of that stuff. So it just refers to the type of education that I have, the type of training that I have, and the type of licensure that I hold.
Nice.
So you can only call yourself a psychologist in the state of Texas if you have a PhD and have certain training.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you for that clarification, because a lot of us think it's the same, but as you explained, it depends on your studying. So how are you doing today? I know I asked you earlier, but how are you doing today?
Well. Yeah,
Awesome.
I'm doing good. Today's a good day.
I'm glad to hear. And the thing is that in our communities, we're so used to saying, I'm fine, I'm well, because we don't want to have that conversation sometimes. We're afraid of being judged. And that's one thing. If we learn to be open and remove the pride from ourselves, we can become ready for conversations that we never had before. Right.
I think it's just a blanket kind of like, how you doing? And everybody's just like, oh, I'm just going to say fine, because I either don't want to talk about how I'm really doing, or people don't really want to hear how I'm really doing. So we just kind of ask it. But when clients come into session, I say, how are you doing? They say I'm fine. And then when they get settled, I say, okay, how are you doing? And so that kind of gets us into the flow of the conversation for the session.
Right, because it's become a default saying, I'm fine, I'm well. I try to say I'm pretty good because it's a balance. It's like I'm not doing great, but I'm not doing bad. So I try to do that. Yes.
Absolutely.
And I want to give a shout out to my Auntie Carolyn. Thank you for tuning in. I know that you're not feeling too well, so I hope you feel better soon. All right, next question. Who or what inspired you to become a psychologist?
Yeah, so I was actually I took a psychology course in high school. So I was fortunate to be able to be in the International Baccalaureate program in high school. And I had a psychology course and a professor, a teacher who actually, I walked into class one day and he was like, hey, Dr. Burrell. And I was like, hey, he was like, Dr. Burrell, right? And I was like, yeah. He was like, well, you're going to be a doctor. And I said, I'm competitive. And I was like, okay, bet. I'm going to be a doctor. And from that point on, I was like, I'm going to be a psychologist. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that's going to look like. But luckily, him saying that kind of sparked this idea in my head that I actually could be a doctor. And I was like, okay, somebody believes in me. I can actually be a doctor. And luckily, I just loved psychology. And once I started taking the courses, I was like, well, there's no stopping. I'm not going to stop here, and I'm going to keep on going. So it was him. It was my high school teacher.
Awesome. That's great. That's great. So that's where I say it stems in the education. Someone's going to have an influence on you, whether it's positive or negative. So I'm glad he had a positive influence to allow you to become the Dr. Ebony we see today. That's awesome. Awesome. And thank you, Auntie Carolyn. I see that you said thank you. Great topic. You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. One of the questions I have is, why is the Black community so hesitant to seek the help we ever so desire? We're not exempt, but...
Yeah, I actually did a talk on this morning. That's why I'm smiling so hard.
Oh, okay.
I had a talk with the library system out of New York this morning, and we were talking about the history of this, why the stigma exists. And so real quickly, I'll just kind of summarize. I know that a lot of people tell us you need to go to therapy, you need to get help, but I also think we need to understand the history and the context of therapy, and why we are so hesitant is rooted in a lot of our history, in that psychology, actually, the mental health field actually started from white male physicians. And it's a medical model in which the mental health field was built on. And so if you think about the ways that Black bodies were treated in the medical system, then that'll give you some idea as to what kept us out of the mental health system. Those same people were in the mental health field. Also, fast forward to 1949, the Harlem Project was one of the introductory efforts to try to engage Black people with mental health services. But the Harlem Project was solely around helping children not become juvenile delinquents. So when you pair mental health with criminality, then what you're saying is that Black folks are criminals and we need to save them. So there's still this savior type of complex associated with the mental health field, and associated with, we need to help these parents become right type of parents so that these children won't go to jail. It never has been about, well, it didn't start out being about helping Black folks become well. It came about helping Black folks either not go to jail or helping Black folks become law-abiding Americans, because we were kind of thought about as having the inability to be law-abiding Americans. Black people were. If we weren't white, we were thought that we couldn't be law-abiding Americans. And then, so that's in 1949, but I want to take our minds back to 1851 as well, when Samuel Cartwright actually coined the term drapetomania to diagnose Black folks with a mental illness if they wanted to escape their white owners. So you have all of this deep, rich history associated with the mental health field.
Yes.
And with working with physicians, we can even go to the Tuskegee experiment. The
Yes.
mistrust that is there is heavy. And so think about what those people, our ancestors, experienced and what that narrative was that they passed down. It's not easy to go seek help from somebody whose intention is really not to help you.
Exactly.
And that trust that's there, or that mistrust that's there, lingers. And we don't pass along, we'll pass along some good traditions and that kind of thing, but we know the way gossip spreads and the way negativity spreads, we're going to hold on to those things that are more negative and hurtful towards us than anything, and we're going to pass that down for protective purposes. So a lot of the stigma and apprehensive of going to mental health was to protect us. Now we can let that go a little bit, but it's still very heavy.
Oh yes, it's very heavy, and I like that you brought up the Tuskegee Airmen. You brought us way back. That's Tuskegee experiment. Excuse me, Tuskegee experiment. I heard about that, and I did some research on it. Talked about it during one of my shows in the past, and it's ever so important to know our history so we can know why we are the way we are right now in the present tense. We don't go back to reading about books such as the Medical Apartheid, for example, that's telling you how slaves were treated back in the day.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
That's ever so important. And
so we can't talk about. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I feel like we can't talk about stigma without talking about the history and how we got here. I think there are so many times we're so quick to be like, well, you need to go to therapy, when we don't really realize the history that's connected to it and a lot of the consequences that people experience as a result of going.
Right. And my cousin Nadia, she was asking what can be done to remove the stigma. That's,
I think we got to normalize going. I think we ourselves have got to go. I think that we've got to share our experiences. I credit social media with a lot of the normalizing therapy these days and making it okay. I think that mental health professionals have got to meet people where they are. That's why you see so many of us on TikTok, because now people can see that we're real people, that we have real voices, that we use real language, and it makes people feel so much closer and connected and in community with people who would be providing a service to them. So I don't think that the onus just rests on the community to do the work. I think the mental health providers have got to do a better job of saying, okay, I went and got this training. Now, I don't have to stick to this training that tells me that professionalism looks a certain kind of way, because professionalism actually makes people a lot more distant and further removed from the mental health process, because they see you as not human. They see you as not being able to relate. So I think that we've all got to do our part. And I think we've all got to watch the language that we use. I put up a post on my Instagram over the weekend around the suicides that have happened. And so many people kind of have the narrative of, if you're pretty, you don't commit suicide, or you don't die by suicide. If you're just faithful enough, you don't die by suicide. Black people who believe in God don't die by suicide. And it's just, it's so many judgments that come from, I think, a place of protection and a place of, well, if they were just faithful enough, they wouldn't have died, or they wouldn't have died by suicide. I think that helps people to protect their own selves by thinking that this can't happen to me. It's almost like they're wanting it to be a distant thing and a them thing, because if it hits too close to home and it becomes too real, people don't know how to deal with that. So we've got to watch that language, and we've got to watch the narrative and the things that we're saying to people when they're struggling with mental illness.
That's right, because I think about Chesley Christ. I think about her, Miss USA 2019, extra correspondent. Her mother, who talked to her every single day, did not know that she was facing this high-functioning depression until it was almost too late. So therefore, we can have those conversations with people, but we still don't know what they're going through, because there's PDD, there's all different types of depression, as you know.
And we got to be careful about what we say about people and what we think depression looks like, what we think depression and anxiety look like. So that's how we reduce the stigma too. And there are so many other systemic issues that keep the stigma in place, but these are the things we can do to control it.
That's right. That's right. Because depression looks different for every single person. You're right. Whether it's male, female, etc. Awesome. Well, the next question I want to know is that you're in Texas. So I want to know what does therapy with Dr. Ebony look like? Because I know you cater to clients specifically in Texas.
Yeah, so I actually really do love therapy. I know you hear people say that, but I actually really do. So therapy with me is more like a partnership. It is more collaborative, and it is more of a think tank. Honestly, we are more thought partners. I'm not an advice, you should do this, you should do that. I don't claim to know more than you. I think that we're on a path together for you to come in with your experiences, me to come in with my experiences. You are an expert, so you're bringing of your own life. I'm not, you are. So you're bringing your expertise in the room. I'm bringing my expertise in the room. How can we blend these to help you get to where you need to go? as a therapist, I always tell my clients, I'm on a mountain, and the only reason I can see your stuff is because you're on a different mountain than me. And I can see across to your stuff. That's the only reason. We're all on our individual mountain. So my mountain is no more cleaner or decluttered than yours. It's just that I can see yours because I have a different angle and perspective. And so there are some things that I might see that I might need to point out to you so that you can navigate this a little bit more safe or a little bit more efficiently. But we're all kind of humans. And I think this came to light and was made more real during the pandemic. And I mean, we were all just trying to survive, and they would come in and I would tell them, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what this is going to look like. But what I do know is that I can hold space for you now for you to process what is happening. Also, a large part of what I do is connect our current adult functioning with our childhood experiences. So if you're coming to work with me, there's going to be a lot of emphasis on, well, when did you feel that in the past? What does that feel familiar to, or what does that feel similar to? And have you ever accessed that emotion like that? And if you did, can you remember your first memories around that? Because a lot of us are carrying so much stuff that's unresolved that we don't know. And a lot of us are showing up out of our stuck childhood places, and we're engaging as adults from those places. So we're taking a look at that.
Yes. Childhood traumas. Because DNA, inside the DNA, we're dealing with the traumas of our mothers, our grandmothers, etc., from both sides of the family. They say Black generational curses, but sometimes we're dealing with that, and we have to, take those blocks off one at a time, right?
I think, for a lack of better terms, I think when our grandma and them didn't know what other words to say, they may have sometimes used the word curses, not knowing that was actually trauma that they were talking about. And it's generational trauma that we're all experiencing, and that many of us are stuck in and don't know it.
Right, exactly. My aunt Michelle was wondering, do you agree that we need to look at the warning signs, and how can we do that, really?
Yeah, warning signs as it relates to suicide. I'm going to think that that's maybe what she's referring to. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we've got to ask people real questions. One of the greatest myths out there about suicide is that if you ask about it, you're planting an idea in somebody's mind, and that's not true. You can't plant an idea in somebody's mind. It has to already be there, and they have to agree with what you said in order for that to then become their reality. If you talk about suicide and it's not something that I agree with or something that I'm thinking about doing, it's just like telling me my shirt doesn't look good. That's your opinion. It doesn't really matter to me, So we need to ask real questions. Are you thinking about killing yourself? I noticed that you have been isolating. I know that you haven't been coming out. I noticed that I've been asking you several times, do you want to come out to eat? And you keep saying no. Are you good? Do you need anything? How can I support you? And asking blatantly, like, are you thinking about killing yourself? Do you want to kill yourself? Have you thought about that? Now, we don't need to take every sign as that, but I promise you, if your gut is telling you that somebody is thinking about it or it looks suspicious, ask with the words of kill yourself or die by suicide.
That's right. Thank you for that answer. Great. Everybody's agreeing with you, saying wise words. Absolutely. So that's right. All right. So with that, I know that you have clients in Texas, but there is a way, everybody, that you can be able to get therapy from Dr. Ebony indirectly. And let me tell you how that is the case. Okay. So I just purchased mine, but you should get yours. My therapy cards. Okay. You can go to the following website, mytherapycards.com. I got mine today right in the mail. I'm very excited to use those because these therapy cards are going to change your life. I'm going to have Dr. Ebony explain more about how they can do such and how you're able to have that indirect connection with her.
Thank you so much. I actually created these cards out of a need. When I started, I actually was just in private practice. I was going to do private practice for a couple of people, and that was just going to be my weekend thing that I did because I still have a full-time job. And I was like, I'm just going to do this to do something on the side. And in Austin, I was the only Black woman psychologist practicing, and what I thought was going to be a few people filled up really quickly. So people couldn't come work with me, and then people would find me online and want to work with me, and I would have to tell them no. On top of that, I found out that people were, of course, not able to pay some of the rates that I was asking people to pay. And so I wanted to create something that allowed people to feel like they, one, had more access, two, could work beyond the geographical limitations, the legal limitations, because we can only work with people licensed, who are residents where we're licensed.
Yes.
And so I wanted people to feel like, well, if I can't work with Dr. Ebony, I at least want to feel like I'm talking to her. So I literally took the questions from where I asked my clients in session, and I put them in the card deck. And so the card deck that was the first deck was the women's deck that you just held up.
Yes.
And I categorized them. There's 3 separate categories within one deck. It's the mindset, habits, and triggers. So I took those primary questions that I asked about mental health, mental blocks. I took those questions that I asked about habits and behaviors, took those questions that I asked about triggers and coping, and I put them into a deck. And so now people can feel like, oh, I'm answering the types of questions that Dr. Ebony or a therapist would ask their clients. So I can really do some quality level work that goes beyond affirmations, that goes beyond intention setting, that kind of thing. And I wanted people to really feel like they're taking up space in a field that hasn't always been welcoming or nurturing to us. So that's why you see the representation of a Black woman. On the men's deck, you see the representation of a Black man. And on the team deck, you see the representation of a Black girl. I didn't want to lump Black girls into Black women because I feel like so many times our Black girls are adultified anyway, that I wanted them to have their own space to still be children. So we did a Black girls deck, we did a Black men's deck, and then a Black women's deck. And I did it so people could have more affordable quality resources.
That's right. And this is a great start. As I was telling you during the sound check, everybody's saying that's awesome, good stuff. Yes, it is. I was saying during the sound check is that I never had therapy myself. So this was a great starting point for me to be able to understand what therapy is all about. It's a great introduction to it. And with the fact that it's Black History Month, I get to support a Black business. So that's another check for me off my list. This is one of my favorite months. You're welcome. So this is amazing. My therapy cards, check them out. And another thing I love about my therapy cards is that you get the chance to actually donate a deck of cards to someone of your choice. Okay. So not someone of your choice, excuse me, anonymously. And my therapy cards is going to select who that person is. So that's another perk.
Yeah, thank you. We give to organizations that support Black women and girls. We give to teachers who have predominantly Black girl classrooms or school counselors. So there's an option, or Black men program. So if you buy a deck, you can donate a deck. You'll purchase it, we'll send it out. And so we do giveaways throughout the year too, and people will reach out to us and ask us if we can send them some decks for their programs. And we have that inventory that we can go to that people have purchased to support them, and we can put them in their giveaway bags and that kind of thing.
Awesome. The earlier, the better. So I love that you have a teen edition. And I love that although you are a woman, you're catering to the men as well to let them know that therapy is a norm. It should become a norm. And that's where we start. So this is awesome. I love that. So I saw they had the money challenge. You had a picture where you had my therapy cards laid out. So that was dope. That was really dope.
Hey, I just love social media so much. It's a love-hate relationship with it. And I see these trends and I'm like, well, we're going to do it too.
The right way.
This is where the
right
people are.
Yeah, the right reason. And then my auntie Michelle said, I've always believed in therapy for my family. It's ever so important. We need to sit down and have therapeutic conversations as a family, find out why this person's beefing with that person. You know, there's so many things we can be talking about. All right. I want to ask you is that what types of challenges have you faced in the healthcare industry as a therapist or just in general as an African-American woman?
So as a therapist, it's just kind of the hardships or the systemic issues that exist with trying to have continuity of care for your clients, trying to find therapists who are or providers who are on the same wavelength as you. Sometimes I'm looking for a nutritionist for my clients who they're looking to kind of work on their eating, or they're looking to gain more information and education about the foods that they're eating. And I'm looking for a nutritionist that's not going to push the diet model on them. That is hard. I'm looking for medical doctors so Austin is super small. So I'm in Austin.
Oh, okay. I've been to Austin.
Austin is lovely. I love it. But there's a scarce amount of resources and Black folks here who are providing the services for the Black people here. And so there's been times where I referred my clients to my gynecologist because the other gynecologists that they've gone to just are not responsive. They're not listening. They're not hearing them. And so it really is a community where I'm human. And if you're struggling with some issues that need to be kind of rectified or looked at and need to be followed by a gynecologist, I'm going to refer you to the one who I have a great relationship with, both personally and professionally. And so I've referred them out, but there are some providers who really don't listen to Black folks and listen to Black women. And so having them get on the same page is hard. Finding psychiatrists who can help prescribe medication to clients and making sure that they're not going to be harmful to them and really going to listen to them and take their needs into consideration has been hard. So you have to vet and you have to build those relationships and network with people. You have to advocate for your clients. I remember having a client one time who was hospitalized and they diagnosed them immediately. with bipolar disorder, and that was not the case. And so having to advocate for them at that level was necessary. And had I not been that person's therapist, they would have never gotten that help or advocacy that they needed to be able to get the right medication for them, or even get the right amount of care for them. So those are the difficulties and challenges that you run up against. For myself, it's just a lack of providers. It's a lack of quality providers who look like me.
Right.
And that's
exactly.
That's just real and awesome. So.
Yes, you're creating that the goals. You're being goals right now by being able to step into an industry that was not made for us. Okay, it wasn't made for us, but you're making it for us at this point. So shout out to you. And then also my aunt, you're welcome. My aunt Michelle, she was saying that she has a business called For Nurturing You because she has fibromyalgia. So she's working with the healthcare industry as well to make sure that those who have these chronic illnesses are taken care of. So shout out to her as well. That's right. We got to do it.
That work.
Yes. How do you take care of you? You're a therapist to others, but how do you take care of you?
So I travel a lot. I love to travel. I love Austin probably because I'm never here. And I'm always gone. I literally was gone last weekend and just messaged my cousin an hour ago, like, where are you going this weekend? Are you going to Houston? Because I'll come to Houston. But I literally go away. I travel for sanity. It was really hard for me during the pandemic when we couldn't travel. I was like, we have to go somewhere. I don't know if we get in the car and just drive, but traveling is how I reset. It's how I realize and get out of my own bubble, because I'm a thinker. I'm in my head all the time.
Me too.
And so it's a way for me to kind of see that the world is so much bigger than what I've created in my own mind. So that's rejuvenating for me. And I also take naps. I literally just took a 20-minute nap before I lost.
Really?
I
love
take
it.
naps all the time. And I was raised like that. So my mom made us take a nap every day after school. So myself and my sister, we take naps all the time, mainly every day.
That's right.
So that's how I take care of myself.
Yes. And someone was asking, is there a plan to make a deck for Black boys? I love these cards.
Yes. Thank you so much. There is a plan to make a deck for Black boys. There's a plan to make a deck for couples. There's a plan to expand the women's deck. And there's a plan to create a food relationship deck. So we're working and we're trying to get them out. But don't want to push too much on people at one time.
Yes. I love it. So you got some supporters up in here. That's what's up. That's what's up.
Thank you.
Yes. So what I want to talk about next is the Black community when it comes to music and media. So I'm gonna play an old clip from one of my old episodes where I was talking about this ride or die mentality that we have. And then lastly, ain't nobody got time to be doing all this riding and dying. A lot of people say, oh, I want a ride or die chick. Okay, you want a ride or die chick, but I'm gonna do that ride and die once. I can't keep being resuscitated, ride or die. It's only so much riding and only so much dying I can do. So back then we had this ride or die mentality where, oh, I need a ride or die chick. She got to go through me when I have an outside baby. She got to stay with me when I have a mistress. She got to stay with me through all this. There's got to be a limit to it. So let's talk about specifically, how does music and media affect the mental health of the Black community, especially with these relationships?
I feel like, did you read my dissertation?
No, I did not.
This is exactly what my dissertation was on. My dissertation was on stereotypes in Black women in hip hop and mainstream media, and how that affects our sexual kind of experiences and how we navigate our own sexuality. So this is right up my alley. And we actually did an assessment on the different types of stereotypes of Black women, and ride or die chick was one of them. So we're heavily influenced by music. Our culture is so rich. Our culture is so rich. And a lot of the cultural kind of things that we get are coming from music. They're coming from movies. They're coming from what we see, fashion trends, celebrities. So music is heavily woven into our history from the beginning of time. So we can't act like we're not being influenced by music. It is who we are. We're just as influenced by music as we are by food. And it's who we are. And so those messages that we are receiving in music when we are consuming music dictates our personalities. It dictates the narratives that we have about ourselves. It dictates how we engage in relationship with others and ourselves. And it dictates our mood. It really does dictate our mood. I can't tell you how many people kind of engage in these fantasies about what their relationship should look like based on a music, a music video or a song. And so we're depressed and we're sad and we're anxious if our relationships and love lives don't look like what's depicted in the song. We're not realizing that that's a fantasy that has been sold to us. We're not realizing that that's not the reality, that's not realistic. And even more so, I think that as an older millennial, I have some separation between what's my real reality and what's my virtual reality. And people who are younger, who are growing up immersed in the virtual world, it's harder to separate virtual reality from real reality, because virtual reality is the real reality, right? And so the more the smaller the gap becomes between what's real and what's not, for these generations to come, it's going to be harder for people to regulate their emotions and settle themselves, because it's going to be heavily rooted in a virtual world that really doesn't really exist, and that that's all made up.
Thank you.
Our mood is heavily influenced. Have you ever gone down your timeline and wondered why your mood changed? Because of the things that you are consuming. So if we're consuming music, if we're consuming media, then that is going to influence the way that we regulate ourselves. And so we have to be on top of that, and we have to be really mindful of that, because it can heavily influence us.
Yes, it can. You're saying you're part of the millennials. I'm a part of Gen Z, made the cutoff. I'm 24, about to be 25. And I'm saying that, like you said, there's a small gap between what's virtual and what's real. And that's the sad part about it. It's like, we got to understand that we're being brainwashed. We have to compete against everybody that we see on our timelines. And we shouldn't have to do that. We got to be ourselves. We try to be all these people. They don't care anything about us. And the thing is, it's like, we don't know who we are. When people ask you, who are you? We can't answer it, because I'm trying to be a little bit of Cardi B. I'm trying to be a little bit of Megan Thee Stallion. It's a combo of all these people.
Yeah.
So it's like, come on.
Socialization for y'all is happening online. We had one high school where we were being socialized amongst 2 other people. Now y'all are being socialized amongst 2 billion more people at a time. And that's a lot of pressure. And it's a lot to try to figure out your identity when you have that much influence and access to that many people at one time. It's hard to figure out who you are when you're doubtful of yourself and you aren't quite sure and you have some questions, and everybody is just telling you what you should do, versus kind of like you just had your high school, and when that cut off, you went home, you saw them again at the football game.
That's not happening no more. Every single second, we're connected
everywhere. Yes,
every single second. There's no break. And then the thing is, like you said, when it comes to social media, the more hours you spend on it, the more stressed you're going to be, because it does change your mental health over time. You can't be on it more than X amount of minutes per day or however long. So it's really, you got to balance it out. And another question we have about your cards is that, will you have cards eventually maybe for couples who deal with mental illnesses in relationships?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So the cards are going to, I didn't want to be fair. The cards, I want them to be used alone, but we also have to be careful that we're not creating cards that are going to leave people in distress, more distressed than they were before they started using them. I wanted the cards to be useful and insightful enough for you to dig deeper, but I didn't want it to be triggering to where people spiraled. So we have to be careful about the questions that we ask and the ways that they trigger people. So people have been asking for a trauma deck, and I'm just not there with the ethics to be able to give people a trauma deck and just have them engaging and digging in their own traumas without any coping skills. So we have to be methodical and strategic about how we go about doing that. But the quick answer to that is yes.
Awesome. Love to hear it. You're right, because we have to take it one step at a time. When we dig too deep, you got to reel yourself back out a little bit. It all depends on the support you have. So do you know anything about the Willie Lynch letter? Have you heard of that before?
I did hear that letter, and I keep hearing that letter is not real. But
I've heard that as well. I've heard that as well. But I'm like, I had a clip of my old episode. I like the fact that what they are talking about is apparent today. So I'm going to play that real quick, and I want to hear your opinion on it. So I'm going to start with the excerpt, which is talking about the slave marriage. So we breed 2 males with 2 females. Then we take the males away from them and keep them from moving and working. Say one female bears a female and the other bears a male. Both females being without influence of the actual male image, they're frozen with an independent psychology, and they will raise their offspring into reverse positions. The one with the female offspring will teach her to be like herself, independent and negotiable. We negotiate with her, through her, by her, and we negotiate her at will. The one with the male offspring, she being frozen with a subconscious fear for his life, will raise him to be mentally dependent and weak, but physically strong. In other words, body over mind. As we know, it should be the other way around. And now, in a few years, when these two offsprings become fertile for early reproduction, we will mate and breed them and continue this cycle. That is good, sound, and long-range comprehensive plan. All right. So with that particular clip, just to give a recap, is just letting y'all know that Willie Lynch letter, whether it's true or not, 'cause I've heard some things as well about it not being true. I'm wondering, what do people think? Specifically you, Dr. Ebony, what do you think when it comes to the fact that women are raising their men to be physically strong but mentally dependent on the woman, and then women are raising our young girls to be physically independent but physically weak, but mentally strong? So kind of how does that go?
Yeah, so this socialization and gender roles is a very deep and much needed conversation, because a lot of us are still adhering to gender roles and kind of socializing our kids in many of the same ways that we've been socialized, and a lot of that stuff doesn't work for everybody. So I think there's something to it. I think based on history, women kind of historically have been the brains behind the ship, so to speak. And I'm talking about family. And I'm sorry, I'm watching my dog. I told you he had a seizure, so I'm just making sure he's okay.
Good.
So women have been raised to be the brains behind the ship. And if we're the brains behind the ship, we're the people making the decisions, we're the strategists. Maybe we're not the people who are laboring to bring in the money historically, but we're strategizing and real strategic about how this family is going to get cared for. And historically, Black women have been charged with keeping the family together when Black men have been imprisoned, torn away from family. So Black women, a lot of the family's safety and cohesiveness rested on the shoulders of the Black woman. And so if that's my truth, and if that's how I survived, then I'm going to pass that down to the women that I'm raising. And I'm going to raise the Black men, I'm going to raise the boys to be able to take care of themselves and provide for themselves, because there's this expectation that you're going to be a provider. And that comes from history of being hunters, gatherers, farmers, fishermen, that kind of thing. So heavy laborers, right? People who are going to bring the money in. And that's what boys are raised to do, not knowing that many times that leaves couples in a mixed match, that leaves couples in competition, or that leaves people feeling inadequate. And so there's things that we're missing. And the socialization continues to create the problems that we see in a lot of marriages. Because people are, that's where a lot of that speak come from when people say I'm weak. I'm supposed to be strong, because we take physical strength to equate to mental strength. And if I'm supposed to be physically strong and I can do hard work, then I should be able to pull myself out of this depression, right? And so and you'll hear a lot of rhetoric around Black women, or not Black women, women in general being emotional creatures. So we're already brainy by stereotype, right? We're already told that we're emotional. We talk a lot. So we're already really just kind of given those characteristics. And so we continue to socialize around many of these roles and expectations, whether they fit or not. That's what people know how to do. And that's what people are relying on, what was taught to them, to then teach people coming after them. And so these are the issues that we end up with when that happens.
Yes. I just thought that was interesting, because I see a lot of times where women, like you said, women are supposed to be strong, independent. I'm a strong, independent Black woman, right? But sometimes we have to be vulnerable. We should be vulnerable, because sometimes we need help too. Like you said, we're the ones who are very strategic. We're always thinking, but sometimes we need somebody who's going to be able to help us and be that lead that we need.
Absolutely. And the strong Black woman trope came from a need to not be the angry Black woman, to show people that there was another way for Black women to exist other than the Jezebel, the Sapphire, the Mammy, the angry Black woman, right? So Black women said, well, we're going to be the strong Black women. We could do anything. And that kind of worked for a while until it didn't work anymore. And we're seeing more in our generation, in our lifetime, where Black women are saying, wait. That's not working. And actually being a strong Black woman is killing me. And I need something else that I could be. So I'm going to rest, or I'm going to take time off, or I'm going to engage in self-care. And I tell people all the time, there was a time in history where that served its purpose. It doesn't typically and necessarily serve its purpose now. So we got to figure out where these stereotypes and tropes actually work for us, and where to let them go.
That's right. Because it's only so much strong we can be. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, Tyrone Jackson says the following: mental illness is physical. You can't talk someone out of it. Sermonizing is pointless. There are several causes of mental illness: tumorous growth, diabetes, fatigue, thalamus, brain, nerve damage, etc. Yeah.
It's all connected. It's all connected. And so when we talk about sleep, when we're talking about depression, we're talking about anxiety. That's why as therapists, we've got to do our due diligence to ask people these questions about diet, to ask people, have you
Yes.
gotten a checkup? What's your blood work like? Are you taking your insulin? Because these things can impact mood just as much as listening to some song can impact your mood. If
That's
your
right.
sugar is not right, if you're not regulated in your cardiovascular system is off and things aren't being regulated normally there, then you will have mood issues, you will have mood swings, and they can look just like depression or look like it's just anxiety, but it can very much be intertwined with anxiety. Oh, very much
Yes.
intertwined with a medical issue.
Yes, that's right. We don't know. Like you said, music has just an influence as the food does. Food does, as well. So that's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. How can we stop the gender wars between black women and black men? We're always saying we say protect our black women, but then sometimes they don't protect us unless we look a certain way. And then on the other side, black men say black women want to be protected, so we also want to be protected as well. How can we stop the war so we can love each other properly in this Black History Month and
I
going
think we
forward?
gotta stop taking the bait. I think we have to stop taking the bait from some of these people on social media who are here to
Mm.
divide and create more of a platform for themselves.
Hmm.
And a lot of people are taking a lot of what these people are saying as gospel and truth, and it's absolutely patriarchy and misogyny. And
Yes,
I
it
think
is.
that we've got to begin to call it out and say what it is. But a lot of times people rest in these rhetorics that kind of point fingers because it feels validating. And so many times we're just looking for people to validate our experiences, to hear us. And so if I'm siding with somebody who says black women do this to black men, then it makes me feel validated. It makes me
Hmm.
feel heard. It makes me feel seen. And sometimes we're fighting against our own inferiority complexes. And we're trying to point the finger and point the blame. And what we're doing is being distracted from the systems that have actually been put in place to continue to divide us and further
Yes.
kind of distance us from each other. And so we're allowing them to just kind of let us bicker and let us kind of like tear each other down. Meanwhile,
Hmm.
they're flourishing and continuing to just spread hate amongst us. And we've got to stop taking the bait. I think we've got to stop and realize what we're doing and stop trying to like be heard and be seen and learn to validate ourselves and our
Hmm.
own experiences and not making it the other next person's fault, but actually just kind of saying, well, wait a second, what is the bigger issue here? How did
Yes.
we even get here? And I think that'll slow down things a lot. But I do think that with this increase in narcissism term and this increase in feminism and masculinity and all this
Yes.
stuff and my feminine energy, I just think that it's continuing to create divide and separation.
You just
And
need to
there's
make sure
really
to have
no,
a positive energy. That's what you got to
yeah,
have.
there's
Forget
no
the
scientific foundation to any of that stuff. So,
And there you go. We're looking for facts here, okay? And if we
yeah.
don't see them, just trying to be positive. So you're right.
Mhm.
I think we need to stop with the self hate that we have so we can be able to love other people. That's where it boils down to because it's
Mhm.
sad that we have to have a gender war. We're further dividing. We already have colorism. Now we got sexism. And we already deal with a major thing, racism. So we're just
Yeah,
adding on, like you said, to allow them to sit back and be like laughing at us because we're further dividing amongst ourselves, which is
that's
the
right.
opposite of what our ancestors did. And because they
Mhm.
had something to
Mhm.
fight for. We act like since we don't have nothing to fight for now, there's no reason to love on one another.
And there's so much to fight for.
Yes,
So
it
much to
is.
fight for. We need to be fighting for equality of all Black folks and
Mm-hmm.
not just ones who we think are on the right side of things. So
Hmm.
we got
Hmm.
work to do for sure.
Oh yeah, we do. We do. Next, I want to talk
Mhm.
about, as you were mentioning about diabetes, etc. I want to talk about Food is Not Bae. I know you have a Food is Not Bae book. Food is Not Bae a podcast as well. So you care about the fact that the relationship that we have in the Black community is a struggle when it comes to food. So let me know what you
Mhm.
think about that.
Yeah, when people hear that I'm a food relationship strategist, they automatically kind of go towards the end of diet culture and weight
Hmm.
loss, and that she's going to tell me how to eat, or she's a person who is on the side of this is what you need to eat, that is not what you need to eat, and that's absolutely not true. As a
Hmm.
food relationship strategist, and the reason that I call myself a strategist is we're learning and educating ourselves about how do we get to this place. And a large part of my work as a food relationship strategist is helping us to understand the history behind how we developed an unhealthy relationship with food. A lot of diet culture, meaning this culture that kind of places thinness as supreme,
Yes.
thinness as superior. The more thin you are, the more worthy you are. That places value in your worthiness on the food that you eat or the things that you consume. That's what we mean by diet culture. Diet culture that says that fat is bad, skinny is wrong. So many of our eating habits have been bred out of that model. right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we go to the doctor and the doctor asks us, well, have you eaten chips? And you're like, yeah, you're like, well, you need to stop eating chips and you need to eat kale, or you need to stop eating chips and you need to eat greens. And we're not, and basically what diet culture does is puts the onus on the individual for having the problem and doesn't take a look at the systemic issues that have created the problems in our communities that have led to us having unhealthy relationships with food. So we can't talk about an unhealthy relationship with food without talking about food deserts, without talking about a lack of resources, without talking about cost, without talking about affordability, without talking about cultures that have been wiped away from us. And we were being fed cultures that have been told to be better for us. So for example, we're told that grits is bad, but oatmeal is good. We're told that greens are bad, but kale is good.
I
We're
love my
told that
greens.
rice is bad, right? Rice is bad, but eat couscous. Like all of these things. And if you stop for a minute and think about it, what is happening is that they're ripping the very culture in essence of who we are and the ways that we engage with food and the food that becomes and shapes our identity and bonding and connections, taking that away from us and feeding us things literally that they feel like is best for us. So many of us will look at each other or look at ourselves and say, oh girl, I can't have greens, but I'm gonna eat this spinach and kale, or I can't have corn, or but I'm gonna eat this quinoa. And if we stop and just think, like they're both grains. Why is one better than other? Because one is heavily rooted in our culture, one is heavily rooted in our ethics or ethnic identity, and the other one is not. And so these things are things that I talk about when we talk about building a healthy relationship with food, is feeling empowered with food and not feeling shame, guilt, anxiety, kind of confusion around the different foods, but really understanding and getting back to listening to your body. Diet culture is super traumatizing because you're kind of taught all these things about your body not being good enough. And what we know about trauma is that trauma comes in and disconnects your brain from your body. And so you kind of lose the ability to listen to what your body is telling you need, because it's filled with rhetoric and education or information around just needing to lose weight. So in an effort to just lose weight to be right enough, we're losing the ability to listen to what our bodies are telling us. Is my body full? Does that make me full? Do I even like kale? Kale is nasty to me and it makes me bloated. But because you told me that's what I need, I'm eating it, which means I'm not listening to my body.
Right.
Which means that I'm not honoring my body. Am I hungry? But you're telling me that I don't need to eat, and you're telling me just to drink water. So I'm further dishonoring myself. I'm not listening to myself. And so when I do that, I lose my mind-body connection and I don't feel settled in my body, and I feel very worn down. I feel like there's nothing right that I can do, and you don't show up empowered in that way. Empowerment comes from saying, what does my body need right now? I need a sandwich, and not being afraid to eat the bread that comes on the sandwich.
Right.
Now, I'm not talking about, and not because bread is a problem, but because you've been told that bread is the reason for the issue that you have. And so a lot of this is just re-educating and unlearning a lot of the things that we learned that are harmful to us and actually not helpful at all.
Exactly. I was 60 pounds overweight, but I ate my bread. I did not eat all these salads because that wasn't in me before I had lost those 60 pounds. Okay. So it's like you said, it's about creating the relationship with food. It's about the mental and actually planning the necessary steps to don't take away the foods that you like, but eat them in moderation. And, you know, big thing for Black History Month, we believe in soul food. There's nothing wrong with soul food, but in moderation, because the food can literally take over the soul if y'all don't relax on some of the stuff you eat. That's why we're saying food is not bad. Go ahead.
Yes, and food is not bad, and they was to stand for before anything else, or better than anything else, that kind of thing. Because a lot of times when we have scarcity mindset, we overdo it. And a lot of what diet culture teaches us is scarcity. And many of us grew up in scarcity. That's why I talk about food deserts. So if you grew up in a place where food was not certain for you, it wasn't guaranteed that you were going to eat, it becomes your everything. When we go on diets, think about when I used to fast or any of those things, the very thing when I bodybuilding at one time, anything that I was told that I couldn't have was the only thing that I focused on. So if you're telling me that I can't have food or I don't have access to food, then that's going to be the only thing that I focus on, and I'm going to overdo it. And in overdoing it, I'm not listening to my body. I'm engaging in more of a hoarding type of behavior, because I don't know when the next time is going to be where this will be abundant to me. So we've got to learn abundance. But in order to learn abundance, we've got to correct the systemic issues that exist that create scarcity in our neighborhoods and our communities.
That's right. I love it. Next, I want to ask you, what is one of your greatest career accomplishments?
Yeah, I would have to say my therapy cards. I had no
Yes.
clue that this would be what it is. That is my greatest accomplishment. Never would have thought that that would be something that I would have come up with. And it was literally just, I just want people to have something they can use. And so the way that people have taken to them, the way that people have talked about them and shared them just means everything to me. So that is my greatest career accomplishment to date.
Awesome.
It's
I
not
love
getting a PhD and all that stuff. It literally
Hey,
is creating these
material.
cards.
Right, material. We can't focus on materials. I love the fact your product speaks for itself. My therapy cards. Make sure I go to mytherapycards.com or go to drebony.com. Okay. Last question for you.
Yeah.
What do you want your legacy to be, Dr. Ebony?
I want my legacy to honestly be one of service. I want people to feel like I was served by the work that she did, even if I never met her. I was served and my community was served. I want my legacy to be one of advocacy and service. Like Dr. Ebony really did fight for us. She really did do the things necessary to bring equality to us, to bring resources to us. She not only showed up as this person on social media, she was actually really this person. So I want people to feel helped. I want people to feel served. And I want people to feel like they have a right to take up space in the mental health space and do their work and to heal. So that's what I want people to remember about me, is that I am fighting for all of our healing because we deserve it. And I walk the walk. I walk exactly what I say. And I'm in therapy doing my own work all the time. And I'm trying to be as congruent as I can when I show up online versus how I am in my personal life when there are no cameras on. So that's what I want people to know.
Sorry, I was talking, but I was mute.
Yeah.
I said, so real. I love it. I love the transparency. And I've seen it just on, not on the Instagram videos, but in real life, from our sound check to this entire show today. So I love your transparency. And I have one more question from the audience as well, asking you, do you plan on writing a book about your perspective on mental health for our culture?
I absolutely do. Now, if I can get somebody to type while I write, while I talk, we would be in there.
Oh, well, that might be me.
It's me sitting down and typing. Yes, it's me sitting down and typing. That's the problem. So I need to find somebody who can type as I talk. But yes, it's
awesome. I love to hear it. That's great. We would love to be able to read a book. I love books. I love books. So this is ever so important, because they say if you want to hide something from a Black person, put it in the book. Now, we need to be able to put in everything we need to know about our mental health in a book. So Dr. Ebony is definitely going to be the one to do it. Shout out to my auntie Ebony, who said, great show, great topic, great advice. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Yes. And I want to let y'all know that y'all can connect with Dr. Ebony at the following Instagram handle here, Dr. Ebony Online. Make sure y'all go to her Instagram page, follow her. Also check out my therapy cards, because I will be using mine and I'll be journaling the process. I'm looking forward to developing as a Black woman with Dr. Ebony's help. I appreciate you so much for joining today.
You're so welcome. Thank you for inviting me. This was great. Thank you.
Yes,
thank y'all for listening.
Of course. Thank you, everybody. I will be seeing y'all next week for another episode about Black health. But until then, stay safe and stay well. I'm out, y'all. See y'all.